Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it.
Greetings, Algo artisans. Wild market open. Wild market last week. Wild market this week. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about Solana, EURUSD, GBPUSD, USDJPY, USDCAD, GBPJPY, AUDJPY, AUDUSD, USDCHF. We're going to talk about SP500 Futures, Dow Futures, NASDAQ Futures, gold, and silver. Let's take a very brief look at the NASDAQ Futures right now, because first of all, I made a hell of a call last week. I just got to do my victory lap. So first of all, while that screen is moving, go ahead and get your free algo, link in the description. Go ahead and get it. Get that free algo, link in the description. I'll send you a free algo. Just give me your email address. You just will go to the next screen. It'll be right there. I'll email it to you as well. But check this out. I made this prediction last week. The receipts are there. Go to the YouTube channel. Look at last week's channel. Right around the 9-minute mark, I talk about the NASDAQ. And I changed this to blue because the new prediction is right here this week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I called that price would go right to exactly where it went. You can see that the prior prediction ended right here within striking distance, within less than $100 away, about $50 or $60 away from where I said it would go. So the NASDAQ melted down. It did take a little bit different of a path. It went up a little bit, but it went ahead and caught up with the prediction, with where the algos said it would go, and based on what I know about markets and what was going to happen in the market, or at least what was supposed to happen. And I don't know anybody else who made this prediction with the NASDAQ. I'm sure someone did. I just don't know who they were. And I did it before your very eyes. So look, this is a once-in-a-lifetime move right here, right? NASDAQ go from 19 all the way down to 17 within a week. I called it out. If you're not sharing this channel around to your friends, you're doing them a disservice. People need to see what I'm doing here every week. You've been watching me for a while. I make some really, really crazy calls at very difficult market times, and that's a reminder as we go back to looking at Bitcoin very shortly here. Markets are very unpredictable, right? Trump is known to reverse policies, and the policies that caused this move down last week could just be reversed pretty quick. Just depends what happens. So we're going to get into that as well. But first, before we get into the charts, we're going to take a look at forexfactory.com to see what news is coming out. So let's do that first. Monday, April 7th, not a lot of news happening. Tuesday at about 10 p.m. EST, New Zealand's bank rate. That'll be big for trading the Kiwi. Wednesday, JPY Governor Ueda speaks sometime that day. We don't know when that is. So trading the JPY can be tricky, right? USD FOMC minutes at 2 p.m. EST. That might move markets in a way. It's hard to say. It's going to take a look at all of the minutes discussion that happened prior to the rate change or non-change that happened like last week, or the week before, whatever it was. Point here being that could move markets a little unpredictable, pretty late in the day anyway. I'm usually not trading that late. Thursday at 6 a.m. EST, Royal Bank of Australia Governor Bullock speaks. 6:30 a.m. is pretty big. It's CPI month over month, year over year, and core CPI month over month. Now, these data right here could make a big change in markets. If this comes in super cool, the market's going to anticipate rate cuts, which might reverse what we're seeing here on the screen and the next screen when I start to look at the charts, right? Charts are melting down, and if there is a super cool CPI, that might hint that rate cuts are coming, and then of course the market might actually start to jump a little bit. And of course at the same time, it's unemployment claims as it is every week at 8:30 a.m. EST. Moving on to Friday, overnight we have the GDP for Britain, Great Britain pound. That's happening at the European Open, 2 a.m. EST. And then we have at 8:30 a.m. EST core PPI, which can be pretty powerful event. It's the cousin to the CPI on the producer side. And then we also have at 10 a.m. University of Michigan consumer sentiment. So those are the events. Those can push markets around. Let's jump back into the charts, and we're going to start with Bitcoin. Okay, so there's last week's Bitcoin prediction in blue. If I make a prediction that's correct, I'll show it. Usually most predictions like this, 4 or 5 days out, they're kind of tricky when you have crazy market events, when they're unpredictable. I usually use these as, hey, if there's no big surprises, this is how it's going to go. Well, in this case, I did have a contingency where it could bounce up and then head down, and it actually did that. But then once the week went underway, of course, the tariff business happened, and then now we're having some pretty ugly stuff happening in the news. In fact, the tariff call was right about here, right? So the markets anticipated, hey, it's not going to be so bad, and then bam. And of course, capitulation has been going on ever since. So now looking at what I think may happen this week, I do expect more capitulation, but it might not go as low as we think. This is kind of almost a worst case scenario to go below 70K, and it may very well not do that. A lot's going to depend on if we get any surprise announcements. We already have 50 countries who want to talk to Trump because the tariffs have forced them to the table to negotiate. Some countries like Taiwan and Vietnam have already said they will just go ahead and remove the tariffs. So if we get a lot lot of that, then this move down may not happen, and it could simply just, bounce up, 70K and start heading back up, right? And that would mean that the rest of the markets are doing the same. So very unpredictable. This is what the markets are showing right now based on the algos. This can change very quickly based on news in this particular case because of how deep the news is into the markets. Let's take a look at Solana. Okay, Solana here, same type of move, strong move down. Now 100 is a very important support, but that looks like it's going to break right through here in a few minutes. And then you have about 90 and 80 and so on. So I have some areas where I think it would bounce on the way down. And then of course the support down at 80 seems to be pretty important. If it melts down below, it goes around 60 or 55. And again, if the news changes, this can completely reverse and start heading back up or stabilizing. All very news dependent. Let's take a look at EURUSD. And by the way, these predictions, before we move on, for all the predictions today, they're stopping at Thursday at the CPI, right? So I'm not going beyond Thursday morning when CPI happens, all right? So we'll take a look at EURUSD right now. EURUSD, we're taking a look at what I think will be sideways to up action. It wants to head up pretty hard, but it is against also a pretty considerable resistance. So this could happen sooner than we think. We might see more of a higher lows type situation, but I think price might actually stay pretty sideways because there's a lot of liquidity, and I think it might need to gather liquidity to make such an extreme move to the upside. So we could see something more powerful, and of course, anything can happen with this current environment, and this could be blown out of the water, but this is what the algos say should happen, or something along those lines. Let's go to the cable, GBPUSD. Now, GBPUSD looking a little more bearish than EURUSD, but still I'm seeing a bit of sideways action, potential pop up, probably just going to go down and to the side, right like here. But it could come up and come back into this long consolidation period that we have seen in past weeks as well, that is between basically $1.28 and $1.30. So we'll see whether or not it has the power to push, or if it's going to dump below and just hang out in this area right there, where the bottom would be about $1.27 or so. Let's look at USDJPY. Now this prediction is a bit tricky. We do have Governor Ueda speaking on Wednesday, so this could do a lot of different things, but usually what happens when the stock markets are falling, anything with JPY on the other side, like USDJPY, GBPJPY, is going to act like the stock market as money flows from the market into the JPY. So we may see some down movement, and if things do stabilize and find a basis, we'll see it go sideways. But again, Governor Ueda may have something pretty crazy to say, and that could move this into different territories. This is just what the algos look like to me right now, and your support is at about 141 yen. And then you do have a bit of sort of support here at 143 yen, about 144 yen actually, so it could bounce right there as well. Let's look at the Loonie, USDCAD. Okay, so I do expect some movement sideways and then a move down. It does look like there's a bit of pressure to the upside on this one, and then it may move down. There is a liquidity area at about 141 Canadian and another at 139.5 Canadian. And price is going to be attracted to those areas, and we could even get a quicker capitulation down to some liquidity below 138.65 Canadian. So looking at just a sideways to down movement. Let's take a look at the beast, GBPJPY. Like all JPY pairs, I expect sideways to down. We could see a bit of stabilization. There's some liquidity at 183.66 yen and right at 180 yen. So price is going to be attracted to those two areas. Whether or not it bounces there is going to depend a lot on what the U.S. equities market is doing. And if price capitulates because the U.S. markets are capitulating, we could see this go all the way down to 172 yen or so. Let's take a look at AUDJPY. Now this one seems to be the most bearish of the bears in the yen group. I'm expecting to move down as low as 78 JPY here, 78 yen or so. Now if it breaks below that, it might be hard to do, but it could go down to about 72.9 yen. I'm not sure it's going to make it there by Thursday when the CPI happens, but if equities keep sliding, this one seems really, really bearish. So we could see a real strong move down. Let's take a look at USD. Pretty nasty capitulation there, but I do think we're going to find a little bit of support around this, right, the current area right here at about 59 USD or so. We're going to see what happens with that, but I do think we're going to just slowly grind down, maybe stabilize somewhere between 57 and 58 cents. So we'll see what happens there. Let's move on to USDCHF, the Swissy. Swissy also bearish. I expect sideways to down, maybe stabilize between about 83.5 to 84.8 0.8 Swiss, but we could also break below this support and then kind of rotate around that. This support here around 83 to 84 Swiss, that's 0.83, 0.84 Swiss. That might be a little tough of a nut to crack. We're going to see what happens with that, but I do have a lot of bearish pressure, so we could see that. Move down as low as maybe 0.82 Swiss. So we'll see what happens there. Let's take a look at SP500. Okay, very bearish open, massive gap down on the open. If you zoom in there, you can see it gapped. I heard it was something like 800 points. See, 50.95 down to, yeah, that's like 80 some odd point gap down. Gross open. There was rumors that trading was halted. I looked it up. I didn't see that happened. There's a bit of a liquidity area here at 4,800, another at 4,650. Price could gather these areas and then really mash down to about 4,100. So we're going to see what happens with that, but I do expect a lot of bearishness to remain unless we see major deals happening this week. If the whole world is suffering that hard and more countries come to the table, supposedly 50 countries are already coming to the table to make a deal, so we'll see how that happens. Let's look at Dow Futures. Again, you can see it here, nasty open. Last week's prediction looking pretty darn good, not quite as accurate as the NASDAQ prediction, but very bearish, and we might see a move down as low as 31,000. There's some liquidity there as my lines all start to populate there. It took a second. Now there is a bit of liquidity right here. Price could actually end up coming down only to 32,400 or so and then start to stabilize, but there's liquidity below that as well. So price could just make its way all the way down there. And again, very dependent on what happens geopolitically. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ. So NASDAQ has liquidity down at about 16,065, and then of course it could head down to 14,100. Okay, so we might see another capitulation, again, very dependent on what happens geopolitically, but these are the two areas where I see price heading to and then maybe stabilizing. Let's take a look at gold. Now, gold is going down. A lot of people say, hey, wait a minute, gold is not supposed to go in the direction of the markets. Well, guess what? A lot of people have a lot of positions in gold, and when the markets go down, everybody liquidates all their positions. It's just what it is. People go to cash. Gold's falling as well, and as long as markets are capitulating in this direction, they will continue to do so with gold. Now, I don't think markets will capitulate forever. We're basically in what is price discovery to the downside, and as soon as markets stabilize, gold will have probably already stabilized and started moving back up. I do expect $5,000 gold within a year or two, if not sooner. But right now, gold's being sold because people have to cover their positions in the rest of the market. And as long as the market is dropping violently, we'll see gold continue to head down. Now, there's some pretty strong liquidity and even supports right around the 2,800 area, 2,880, 2,870. So we might see it go ahead and make it down there and pop back up. And it might not even make it down past 2,975. Gold is a little unpredictable in that sense. And if geopolitics really starts to kick off, then this could head up a little bit depending on which way it kicks off. If there's some kind of war that happens, which oftentimes happens when you have trade wars, all of a sudden it turns into shooting wars, and gold would probably head up right then. Very unpredictable. This is just what the algos have happening right now. Let's take a look at silver. Nice move up on the open here for silver. Silver popped up, and now it gapped down and then popped up. I drew this before the market opened, so now if I were to amend this, we know what's happening here, but I still think we're going to see sideways and down. I don't think this little pop-up is going to last for too long. I think it's just covering a fair value gap, and we'll see it go ahead and head down. I could be incorrect. I have it a little more stable than gold, just by the algos. And of course, if anything happens in geopolitics, this can change. These charts are always to do with what the algos say. Now, as you have seen, as I've demonstrated, I'm pretty darn good at predicting these price movements, especially last week with the indices and NASDAQ. I called NASDAQ down to a T, and that's what everybody's watching right now is NASDAQ. This whole meltdown started really when DeepSeek came out with their AI solution. The world found out that not a lot of money is needed for AI like we thought. And there were billions and billions and billions going into AI in the US, and the world figured out when DeepSeek did their thing that, hey, it doesn't cost that much money to build AI. So a lot of investment money is going to not be needed for AI. And a lot of market valuation, I think like $1 trillion came out of NVIDIA that day or that week or something like that. So this bubble was popped probably a month before what you saw last week. And the tariffs are just, the next thing. And also, there's a lot of movement of money around the world right now, some of it being retaliation for perhaps the US not wanting to go along with certain things in Ukraine. And there's so many things. It is extremely complex, and to try to guess why and what, none of it really matters, right? We can't control when decisions will get made. We cannot control what decisions do get made. What we can do is turn into the skid. Maybe you lost a trade that you were in. Okay, that's fine. Let the technical market unfold. Use the charts to predict where money is going next, and then make your trade. That's what we teach over at Algo Factory. So please come to algofactory.tech. Check us out. We will teach you how to trade like a hedge fund professional. Go ahead and get your free algo like you see right there on the screen. Link is in the description, and we will see you Tuesday morning, 8:30 a.m. bright and early. Thanks for watching.